This morning's reading is quite short and it comes from Numbers and it's chapter 6, verse 22, the priestly blessing. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. So they will put my name on the Israelites, and I will bless them." Amen. Amen.
Father, we pray that you will bless this reading of the word to us, and then we pray that you will bless Derek as he comes to speak to us. Will you equip him, we pray? Will you speak through him as he listens to your voice and seeks to bring your message to us? May we have hearts ready to hear and to take in what you would speak to each one of us and apply it to our lives. Amen.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone. Just a little bit of tidying up of Bibles and other bits and pieces up here. I like a clean lectern. I'm thinking back to how often I have come here. It's been spasmodic through the years, but when Stephen said that at the beginning of the service, it struck me I am in my 50th year of preaching in this church. Now, I know you're all looking at me. He can't be that old. You're not, are you? But one of the reasons why in recent years I've gone on the radio, and I know that if it's true to previous years, there are some of you who listen to me every week on the radio, so thank you for that. But I've done that because you do look younger on the radio. I have a radio program on Premier in this country, as well as a lot of community radio stations. Premier is Saturday morning, Saturday night, early Sunday morning, and I know they got the right program because when Pauline and I were motoring here, we clicked on and I only needed 10 seconds of myself. That was enough. I heard myself and I thought, yeah, they've got the right program there. But we're in over 100 countries that way. Things have changed during the 50 years for you. You used to be meeting down the road there, didn't you? And you kind of moved into here, and I know that there are prayers afoot regarding what might be the future for you and wisdom for you and for the church leadership for how that works out. But I know that things have changed in other ways. I mean, I know now that I can preach to you for at least a couple of hours. You hope I'm joking. You will know when I have finished because there will be a benediction. That's how it's always been, hasn't it? I mean, we meet for worship and we sing the hymns and we stand up and we sit down and we pray and we listen for, I know it's not 2 hours, it's only an hour. You listen to people like me for whatever length of time, and you then have a benediction. And that's very important, we reckon, because how do you know when you can get up and leave without a benediction? How can you know you can have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee? So is it just a nice way to end the service to signal we can leave now, get in that red car out there and motor off, having had some free parking out there? Is that all it is about? You know it's not, don't you? But I wonder if we realise just how very significant a benediction really should be for us. And that if we enter into the benediction at the end of this service in the way in which we should, it is going to change us for the rest of the week. You see, a benediction is a blessing, and the most famous one that we have in the Bible is the Aaronic blessing. I didn't say the ironic blessing. He was the brother of Moses, Aaron. And at the tabernacle there, he he would stand and he would raise his hands and he would pronounce a blessing over those people as they left that tabernacle area. And I want to spend just a few moments talking about the content of the blessing so we know what it is. How crucial it is that we experience that blessing, how it can be conveyed into us, how we can become channels of that blessing to other people, and most important of all, what the conditions are, so that we can go out of this place thoroughly blessed to be a blessing to other people. Paul wanted that for himself, which is why he wrote to a church and said, I know that when I come to you, I will come to you in the full measure of the blessing of Christ. Don't we want to be contagious like that as we touch other people's lives? We really can be. So what are the contents of the blessing? What are we talking about when we talk about the blessing and the benediction of God upon our lives? In Bible times, a father blessed his children. He was doing more than wishing them well. You know, the kind of thing that the comic does at the end of his gig, when he looks at his audience and he says, well, you've been a great audience, good night, and God bless you. God is saying, whatever it takes, I want you to experience my peace and provision in your life. My shalom, a sense of harmony in your relationship with me and with other people. I want that for you. I want you to know that my name is identified with you. You know how it is if an orphan becomes part of a great family and they take the name of that family upon themselves? Everything else changes. And this blessing is the blessing of that association. And when the greatest teacher the world has ever known came, he began his ministry with the word blessed. In fact, because of what he said and because of what he did, he became the blessing giver. Now, when we talk about a blessing, we often will talk about a little bit of chocolate that we can get out of a cup, right? Or we can talk about a roof over our head and food in our body and good relationships with other people, and all of those, like health, are blessings. If you have a prayer chain here, I can almost guarantee that 100% of the prayer requests that come through are for health. And we understand that. But you see, there are people who are unbelievers who can experience those blessings as well as the believers. As a believer, you can experience every spiritual blessing for time and for eternity. Indeed, if you check out the Bible on this, you will find, once identified with Christ, there are 75 blessings you can start to experience in the here and now. And yet, in saying that, I realize it's redundant because Jesus had titles, and every title is a promise of a blessing. You go along the road and you see the title supermarket, and you know that's a promise of food that you can get in that place. Do you know how many titles Jesus has? 240. And here's just a handful of them. To the hungry, he is the bread. To the thirsty, he is the fountain. To the blind, he is the light. To the sick, he is the great physician. To the dying, he is the resurrection and the life. To the uneducated, he is the truth. To the lost, he is the way. What do you need? You have the answer in him. He is the carpenter who makes the door. He is the builder of the sure foundation. He is the geologist because he is the rock of ages. To the astronomer, he is the bright morning star. And to the zoologist, he is the lion of the tribe of Judah. To the soldier, do you know what he is? The Prince of Peace. To the orphan, he is the everlasting Father. And do you know what he is to the psychologist? The wonderful counselor. He is the door and what you find on the other side of the door. He is the fountain and the water that comes from that fountain. He is the priest that brings the sacrifice, and he is also the sacrifice. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the A to the Z. What do you need? You have the answer and the blessing in him. And the blessing on our lives is crucial. You see, we all need people who say, you're of worth. You matter and you count. And when we sense that we are not getting that we so want it, sometimes relationships mess up and we end up getting exploited by other people because we're constantly looking for that sense of worth and value about our lives. If we have God's blessing on our lives, then we'll not be running around trying to find it in our insecurity, in places where it can never be given. There'll be about us a poise and a confidence because there will be a joy and peace in our believing. But how are these blessings conveyed? Imagine Moses' thoughts when God told him to bless the people. The Lord make his face shine upon you. He would be astounded. Do you know why? Because after many years of walking and talking with God, he came to a point on Sinai when he said, would it be possible for me to see you face to face? And God said, that cannot happen. My very holiness would shrivel you up in your sinfulness. There is no way sin can dwell with holiness. So when Moses heard God say, it is possible for my face to shine upon you, he will be astonished. But there's a big hint in the blessing itself. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. That's it. The Lord's face shining on us is an act of radical grace. So somehow God must do something about sin in us to make it possible for us to relate to him. And the blessing came at the end of the tabernacle service, which was after the offerings as a substitute, a sacrifice, a death for their own sin. It wasn't entirely clear to Moses what they were doing, but when you read the New Testament in Hebrews, it tells you about how that was all leading up to the ultimate sacrifice that was made in Jesus. And because Jesus took the condemnation, we can know commendation before God. And this is the crucial blessing we need and can have. But how do we become channels of that blessing into the lives of other people? How do we give blessing to others? Get visual, vocal, and value one another. In other words, it's in a look, a word, and a touch. Have you noticed the looks of Jesus in the Bible? And how it changed people? A look at Peter, which shriveled him up, and another look later, which restored him and renewed him. A look. I remember back to the very early days of my ministry, and I was invited to my first Bible conference. Back in those days, this church would have conferences Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, 2 speakers, and you would alternate. Some of you will remember that. And I realized very quickly at the first one that I had been invited to, I was there for the young people. The other guy, who was very mature and very well known in evangelical Christian circles, if I was to mention his name, some of you oldies would know it, I'm for sure of that. Do you know, I did my bit. And then I think it was 3 or 4 days later, I had a letter from that man. And he said, My ministry is coming to an end. Yours is just beginning. And I believe that God has got his hand on you. And I'm going to pray for you on a regular basis. And I know that he did. Because I would sometimes be in the area where I know he was in his retirement, and he would come to that meeting. He would sit there. He would open his big Bible. If I mentioned a verse, his eyes would go down to it and then look at me and smile. He knew that verse better than I did. But you see, he was there for me. And he was encouraging me. We can do that, can't we? We can look around and be that kind of blessing, can't we? Get vision. And get vocal. There is affirming power in our words. A look, a word, and a touch. Do you remember that touch of Jesus, of that leper? Probably the first touch he had had in many years. A touch of blessing. It was the first day in the social studies class at college. A tutorial group of about 14 or 15. Woman teacher, about 50. And she said to the group sitting in chairs in the circle, now I want you to give your name, tell us where you were from, and then one thing you like about yourself. They got halfway round the group and they came to a girl. She had long hair and she'd had her head down with her hair right over her head. And she said, your turn. And she sighed, looked up and said, well, if you would like to know what I don't like about myself. And she swept the hair back from one side of her face, and there was a huge birthmark covering all of it in an angry red colour. The teacher just reacted spontaneously, reached out, touched her on the shoulder, gave her a kiss on the birthmark, and said, it's all right, dear. It's all right. Well, it wasn't. The girl burst into tears and sobs, and in between it she said, why couldn't my mum and dad do that? They wouldn't even let me talk about it. Why couldn't they do that? Our homework is to go out of this place seeking to be a blessing to other people. You can do it by the way you look at people, with the sensitive touch of people as well as your words. Give blessing, but get more of it ourselves. Every believer experiences saving grace, but do you realize there's something called greater grace? James wrote, he gives more grace. John referred to that when he said, from the fullness of his grace, we have all received one blessing after another. Let's not settle for less than the full blessing of God. Okay, but how? What are the conditions for experiencing that blessing? James writes about more grace, and he's quoting from the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. A proud life is hard to grace. There are only two words used in the New Testament to describe Jesus, from Jesus himself, gentle and humble. And Peter says, clothe yourself in humility toward one another. In other words, to be like Christ. There needs to be a humility about us. So we expect challenges from people like me, don't we? Get closer to God. And then you're going to know more of his blessing. I'm not going to say that. Because sometimes if we can do it and begin to get our lives sorted out ourselves, that could be the worst thing, because we become proud and full of ourselves. Look what I've achieved, and we become pharisaical. And I'm not going to say it because when you do go out of here thinking, right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that to live out this Christian life in my character, and you can't do it, you're going to end up frustrated and feeling guilty come the end of the week. It doesn't work. The answer is to look into the face of Jesus, to see what Jesus has done on the cross in his saving death, to see what he has done because he died but rose again and ascended, and by the Holy Spirit comes to live in us so that we can know his saving life as we become available for him to do things in and through us. Let's not settle for less than the blessing of God. So it's time for me to say goodbye and give you a benediction. And my benediction, based upon God's word, is simply this. He said, I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And I want for us the blessing of not just love, but a love that surpasses knowledge. Not just joy, but a joy unspeakable and full of glory. Not just peace, but a peace that transcends understanding, because it's not just grace, but a much more of his grace. Goodbye means God be with you. God be with you. Goodbye, and God bless you.
Wow. Stunned with the service. Amazing.
grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be our portion. Amen.